Sherrie, there's a lot said about becoming an attraction agent, but to become an attraction agent, that requires a lot of profile marketing.
Yes, no, I agree. And I think as much as everyone wants to be an attraction agent, the reality is that you actually need to get there first. So I think, you know, the first thing you need to do is actually just build up that, I guess, that profile by hard work and by creating, you know, raving mad fans. And then once you've got raving mad fans and they start to give you referrals and then it all starts to come together, and then you start to make money so that you can actually, you know, post on the internet and those sorts of things.
So is it like building blocks? You just start with one, you make the best thing, you do the best you can with that, then you build on it?
Yes, and I think people look at, you know, what they want to do in a year. I don't look at it that way. I'm actually very focused on 3 months, and I use each individual property, I guess, as you talk about, as a block to actually get to the next step, to get to the next step, to get to the next step. So it is very, very specific.
You work in an office that's got some pretty high-profile operators. In fact, some of the best high-profile operators in Brisbane or Queensland, maybe even Australia. Who knows? But how do you stand out in that environment? Why would someone come to your office and list with you?
Yeah, you are right. I do work in a remarkable office, and if I may, that's probably one of the reasons why I want to work there, because I actually want to be in an environment where people want to be the best at their craft, and we all want to have that high-performance mentality. You know, I am truly blessed to work in that environment. But I suppose at the end of the day, you know, if I'm coming up against somebody else high profile in my office, quite often what we'll do, rather than fight each other for it, we'll actually just join forces and we'll go for it ourselves. So I think our office has a very different atmosphere to most other real estate agencies, where we're not actually fighting each other. We're actually do genuinely want the best for each other.
Sherrie, how important has social media been to you in building your profile?
Well, that's really been a foundation, I suppose, to my business. So I get at least a lead a day from Facebook. Now, some of them may not be my preferred leads, but the reality is that if I'm not able to work it, I might be able to refer it to somebody else in my office or another agency. So I think it is absolutely fantastic. Yeah,
and of course video's given us that opportunity to actually show a lot more personality in what we do. Do you use that in your communication?
Yeah, look, I do. I love video, and I do see the relevance, and I do very strongly believe in video. So as soon as I list a property, I literally do, you know, the 30-second, you know, hold my phone up or my iPad up. And it's really funny, people love those videos. The professional ones, you know, I always get a couple of likes, but I get lots of shares for these you know, 30-second videos that I do. And it's really funny, I literally stand up there, I do one take, and I'm back in the car and I'm kind of running off. But the amount of people that might call me up and say, oh, Sherrie, I don't know if you realise, but you said and there a few times, or, you know, so people are actually really watching.
Critiquing you.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that's kind of great. But, you know, I'll run into somebody in the street and they'll sort of say to me, you know, hi Sherrie, how you going? I'm like, great, I haven't seen you in ages. And they said, well, I feel like I see you all the time because I watch your videos. So I know that they're actually being used. One property that I sold earlier this year, the video was actually shared and I got an offer from somebody else's database, I suppose, on Facebook, which is powerful. You use video also for seller feedback, don't you? Yes, I do. So as soon as I finish an open home, I do send a video to my buyers, but I also do send one to sellers as well, because then I'm in the car, they're dying to find out what happened at the open home, and I don't necessarily have a moment to give them a call at that time. Sometimes, you know, I might need to call somebody hot back from an open home 1 or 2 before, but they know that I'm going to get back to them that day, but they've got an immediate response ready to go. Those videos you do for buyers who come to open homes, are they done for every individual buyer? Not every buyer, but obviously if somebody has come to a few of my open homes that day, they will actually be more specific, because it's clear that they're a qualified buyer who's ready to go now. And what do you say to them? I just generally thank them for their time and for coming through, and see if they have any further, you know, interest to give me a call, and letting them know when I'm going to be in contact furthermore. Have you got a script for that, or is that just done off the cuff? Well, we do it a lot, so I guess we've kind of become a little bit programmed, but no, it's done off the cuff.
Hello and welcome to the show as we have a look at what's coming up with the auction activities over the weekend ahead of us. Geoff White from CoreLogic will join me in just a moment, and he will tell us that 4 out of the 6 capital cities actually achieved a success rate under 50%, and in fact 4 also fell below the results of the previous week. More details in just a moment.
In theory, you run with your legs. In theory, you play the guitar with your fingers. In theory, graffiti is vandalism, and madness is a weakness. In theory, walls are climbed over. In theory, boats don't fly. In theory, molecules are for chemists. In theory, stunts are done by doubles. In theory, you can't impact science before graduation. In theory, you can't score in every match. In theory, you crack under pressure.
And joining me once again as my co-host, Geoff White from CoreLogic. G'day, Geoff. How you doing?
Hello, Kevin. How are you going?
Yeah, good, mate. A bit of a sobering end to the week. Having a look at the weighted average, which we'll bring up now, just a touch over 50%.
Yeah, 50.9 from 1,667 auctions. And the point you make is that 4 of those capital cities were lower than the clearance rates of the week before.
Yeah.
So that was interesting, but it's still maintained above 50%. So we've had 5 of the last 8 weeks where we've been above 50%, and we haven't had a run like that since probably September last year. Okay. So there's some good news and perhaps some less good news in the sense that we've had some lower clearance rates this week across some of the capitals, yeah.
Okay, well, which of the 4 were actually lower than last week, Geoff?
Yeah, okay, as we run through them, Sydney finished with 52.1 from 506 auctions, and now Sydney was down by 2% on the week before.
Yep.
So that's one of them. Melbourne actually did the opposite. It finished at 55.1 from 814 auctions and was up about 3%. So probably counteracted the downward trend in Sydney. Brisbane 28.2 from 121. Now Brisbane was effectively down 9% on the week before. So that was an interesting one, and we'll have to keep an eye on that. Adelaide also down 7%. 46.3 this week and 115 auctions, but down that 7%. Perth 40%. Low auction numbers there, but Perth was actually up 14%. Their clearance rate on the week before. Yep. And Canberra was also down, but 1% only, 48.3 from 62. So they're the ones that have been up and down this week. So, yeah.
Okay, well, Geoff telling us there that the Sydney results week on week were down, the clearance rates. Let's have a look at the sub-regions in Sydney. Which were the ones that impacted the market most, Geoff?
Yes, as you skim through them, Kevin, you can see that we're probably seeing more 50s than we probably saw. We probably saw a few more 60s, the week before as you skim through them. Still, only 2%. And typically at this sort of market environment we're in, Kevin, you do tend to see clearance rates that they bump along. They go up and down a bit as it's trying to find a level. And that was very much the case in September last year. So, look, running through that, again, volumes were down. We didn't have any sub-region above 100. But if you look at the likes of Eastern Suburbs, 61.4 from 71 auctions, that looked quite strong. And City and Inner South, 66.7 from 61 auctions. They were probably the standouts in terms of volumes and percentages there. But they do tend to range. As we've seen with Sydney, they can drop down into the 30s, as we're seeing with some of them. But certainly nothing above the mid-60s in the sub-regions in Sydney.
Yeah. Well, Melbourne held up pretty well, as Geoff told us week on week. The clearance rate 55.1%, which is up on last week. Let's bring up the sub-regions. All fairly healthy, all around the 50s, with the exception of the West.
Yes, that's right. And the West can be a bit like that, depending on the types of properties that are being auctioned. However, yes, if you look through there, the Northwest was very strong this week at 65.5 from 66 auctions, but the big volume areas like the inner parts of Melbourne, inner sub-region, 174 auctions, 54.6, and the inner south, 150 auctions, and still above 50 with 51.3. So again, pretty good. And the Melbourne overall being 55.1, up 3% on the week before.
Very good. Okay, well, let's take you to this weekend. And we can see straight away Sydney up in auction numbers, Melbourne up in auction numbers, even Brisbane is up as well.
Yeah. Brisbane's got a few more. Maybe they've been listening to us, Kevin, about auctions in Brisbane. But 182 in Brisbane. That's good, and that'll be an interesting one to watch because we saw the Brisbane clearance rate come back a bit, but this will prove, the types of properties that are auctioned and the demand for them, and we'll watch the clearance rate on that one. But Sydney, 770, Melbourne 919, Brisbane 182, Adelaide over 100 with 101. So there's overall across the nation over 2,000 auctions. We're tracking 2,048, which is about 670 up on last week.
Yeah, well, it's going to be interesting to watch what does happen this weekend.
Exactly.
Yeah, we will particularly watch that Brisbane result as well at 182 auctions. Let's have a look at the weekly clearance rate, the rolling average, becoming quite predictable now, still increasing, that little tick up at the end.
Yeah. Yes, that's right. It's actually a proper U-turn that we're seeing there in that graph, and that trend is continuing. And I think while we're seeing the weighted average above 50, we're probably going to see that. It might start to plateau a little bit. I don't know that the market has got the strength to sort of see it push towards the 60 yet. And perhaps that might be still to come. The only thing that might happen is that we might see auction volumes drop a little bit as we go into winter. And if demand still remains strong, the clearance rates could actually be quite healthy. But again, that's a bit of crystal balling there. But we'll wait and see what happens. Yeah, but the graph is looking promising, certainly in the last 3 months.
Yeah. Well, you did predict for us that the auction numbers were going to increase as we head towards Easter, only 3 weeks away now. So we might just see those continue to climb, Geoff, as we get closer to Easter.
Yeah, that's right. There'll be some vendors that'll want to be into the market and out of the market before the winter months, and hence the auctions will be they'll be quite busy, but certainly not the volumes we've seen in recent years, as you'd predict in this sort of market that we're operating in at the moment.
Final clearance rate, just to sum up from last weekend: Sydney 52.1%, Melbourne 55.1%, Brisbane down at 28.2%. Adelaide 46.3%, Perth 40.1%, and Canberra 48.3%. And Geoff, this weekend, just to summarise, Sydney 770 auctions, Melbourne just a touch under 1,000.
Yeah, that's pretty healthy for Melbourne. 919. Yeah, Brisbane that 182, as we said. So they're the bigger ones, and of course we'll watch the ones like Canberra, Adelaide, Brisbane, and just see where they're going over the course of the next few weeks. If Melbourne and Sydney can hold that sort of low 50s in this sort of market with volumes that we've got, I think that's a pretty good outcome, bearing in mind we were talking a lot of 40s late last year. So. Yeah.
That's true. Yeah. Really good summary, as always, Geoff White from CoreLogic. Geoff, thank you very much. Look forward to catching you on Monday. We'll give you a full wrap of the auctions and their results over the weekend. We'll also take you inside the top sales in Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, and also in Adelaide. And don't forget, the property news update is also out today, and Real Estate Talk out tomorrow. But Geoff will rejoin us. Geoff White from CoreLogic will rejoin us on Monday morning, and we'll have a look at the auction results over the weekend. Thank you, Geoff. Have a great weekend.
Yeah, you too, Kevin. All the very best.
Evening, Clara. Home, please.
David, what's on your mind?
I was just thinking of a different time is all. It was a time when I used to sit up there, you know. Driving wasn't just about being taken from place to place, but going somewhere. Feeling something along the way.
Please, David, you should relax.
I'm afraid that's just the problem.
David, where are you going? David? David?